Catherine de Medici was an evil witch, and the Queen of France. And actually, likely wasn't even a witch at all. Sometimes I just be saying stuff. But they did accuse her of being a witch, and she did do some evil shit. But all the piss drinking might have just been for fun and not magic. Welcome to the story of Catherine de Medici. I'm Evil Cece, and this is part 2 of Catherine's story. And where we left off in the story, Catherine and her husband, King Henry II of France, have become the king and queen, and they have made 10 children together. But Catherine's dumbass husband doesn't really like her that much, and instead he spends all of his time with his mistresses and gives them better positions than Catherine within his court. So Catherine puts all her attention into her 10 children, marketing herself as the mother of future kings, detaching herself further and further from her freak-ass husband. But being a professional mother in the 1500s was an extreme sport. This is a time when pregnancy and childbirth are extremely dangerous and death is a very common outcome. And in 1556, she would nearly die in childbirth. She was giving birth to twins. One of the babies tragically died during birth and the other one died a few weeks later. And because of this extremely high stakes tragedy, the king's medical advisors did not want him having any more children with Catherine. And since the king is a fuckhead and he sees his wife as basically just a breeder and now he's being told there's no reason to have more children with her, he just ignores her completely and stops visiting her altogether. But Cathy just keeps it pushing, raising her lacrosse team of children and other people's children, like Mary Queen of Scots, who was the daughter of the King of Scotland and Mary of Guise. And the Guise were a family friend of Catherine's king husband. Mary Queen of Scots moved to the French court at just 5 years old. She was raised in Cathy's crew with the idea that she would grow up and marry Catherine's oldest son, Francis. And at this time, Europe is overrun with chaos demons. Italian wars are popping off, but it would all come to a sort of resolution when Catherine's oldest daughter, Elizabeth, marries King Philip II of Spain, though he's way older than her and she is a teenager, who was previously betrothed to his more age-appropriate son. But whatever, Paris loved it. They threw a huge costume rager as a sort of celebration by proxy, and it went on for 5 days of jousting, feasts, grand balls, you name it. And during the celebrations, Catherine's husband, the King of France, decided he was going to dress up in his favorite mistress Diane's colors and joust his little friend. But his dumbass got knocked clean off his horse and had his face shattered and splintered. So he's getting tended to by all the doctors. Catherine's right there by his bedside. Would the king have preferred to have his beloved mistress Diane by his bedside? Who cares what that slutty king wants? Only his wife Catherine is permitted, and Diane didn't push that at all because she knew if something happened to the king, she's in a lot of danger and her shit's about to get rocked. So she's playing nice. And then on July 10th, 1559, the 40-year-old King Henry II of France dies. And now it's really about to get rolling. Catherine carefully crafts her image to provoke sympathy from her subjects. She used a broken arrow as her emblem and would dress in all-black goth diva for the rest of her life, mourning her shitbag husband. She settled into her position as Queen Mother when her son, Francis II, and his wife, Mary Queen of Scots, took the French crown. Francis had rumors of being a sickly freak though, and the nobility really tried to push his little ass around. So she convinced her son to give her power and titles within his court so she could guide his rule. Something she should have been doing in her husband Henry's court if it wasn't for his mistresses taking those positions. Speaking of mistresses, when Cathy took power, she took back all of the jewels, all of the land, all of the houses that had been gifted to Henry's mistress Diane, even going as far as to undo any renovations that she had made inside the house, and kicked her and all of her friends right out of the French court. And this is a very transformative time all across Europe, not just with arts and culture, but religion. We have talked at length about Martin Luther's fuck-ass haircut in the Protestant Reform, and France was no exception. And though the French nobility and government, namely the Guise brothers, were all Catholic, the Protestant Reform in France was growing. One group, the Huguenots, practiced their Protestantism very openly, and they made up close to 10% of the French population. And they weren't playing. They were carrying out religious killings, they were robbing the churches, they were digging up the saints, and so the French government decided to harshly punish these Protestant heretics. But Catherine took a different approach, aiming to prioritize peace over killing. Which did surprise me, because she was raised very Roman Catholic and related to like 4 popes, so I thought she would be more Team Catholic. But Cathy is a politician, honey, and she knows she needs to be careful here. So she's promoting peace. The French government, however, was fighting back, and tensions got so high that the French court had to be moved to avoid threats of violence. Some gruesome battles would occur All while Cathy and her friends are trying to push through these little policies in order to have protection and peace for the Protestants, the ones that worship privately. It's a muddy, bloody political mess. And as Cathy is gaining some momentum in her political power, her son, the King of France, falls ill. And she knows with all this unrest, it might get incredibly shaky for the crown if she doesn't solidify something quick. And so she strikes up a deal with the Huguenot leaders that they will support her second son as the king. In exchange, Catherine will release one of their men off of death row. And so in August 1560, when her son, Francis II, died of an infection, Catherine was appointed the governor of France. Yeah, bitch, the Privy Council said Cathy's on top. And for the first time since marrying her fuck-ass husband, Catherine would have real power within France. Even more power than she had as queen. Her second son, Charles IX, is made king, and we're off to the races. Charles is a child, and he's dorky, he's sickly, and he's terrified of this king shit, so Cathy is basically just ruling in his place. And so some of the foreign ambassadors are like, why is this little bitch boy with asthma the king of France during very violent civil wars? But Cathy was putting in work for her son, calling meetings with religious leaders in order to try to reach some sort of mediation. But their hate of man ran way deeper than their love of God, so they never really found that common ground. And so Catherine is like, oh my God, fuck you guys, and just wrote an order that demanded religious tolerance. So that should settle it, right? Nope, the French Catholic Guise brothers are horrible monsters, and in March 1562, there is a massive massacre in the streets, and kicked off a bunch of bullshit all over again. Peace, war is pretty much the theme for the next 30 years or so, with important figures dying on both sides, including one of the Guise brothers, which actually rocked for Catherine because now his bitch ass wasn't causing problems in her son's government. The war wound down in March 1563 with the signing of some treaties. And now that the Catholics and Protestants have agreed to stop murdering each other for no reason, they can come together and fight France's real enemy, the stinky English. They'd fight and win some land back that was being held by the English. Later that same year, Parliament would rule that her son Charles was now old enough to be king on his own. But Charles, despite that, would still lean on his mom for pretty much everything. And the two of them went on a sort of image revival tour, spending a year and a half traveling France, shaking hands, kissing babies or whatever, and keeping an eye on all the bullshit. But it wouldn't be long until the Protestants attack again and war would break out. And with an attack on her son, Catherine really changes her tune on religious tolerance and instead is like, hey, fuck around and find out, uglies. Hammers them until they retreat to Navarre. And then at some point, everyone just can't afford this shit anymore and they decide to just settle it in 1570 and sign a bunch of treaties. And with everyone being normal and shutting the hell up for a minute, Catherine is able to focus once again on what's important, marrying her children off to important people in Europe. And the wedding era is probably what Catherine is most famous for, because there's a wedding coming up in this story where 70,000 people get slaughtered. Red wedding, but make it historical. So if you'd like to know what comes next for Catherine, make sure you leave me a comment so I can use it for the next video. I'll take you to the massacre.